This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and this is the Weekend Post-Mortem. Hello, mate. How you doing?
How's it, Brett? We were treated to a lot of images of Gerard Butler, and an interesting fact for our viewers is I share a romantic interaction in the sense that both Gerard and I have had the same ex. Ooh. Curious, isn't it? A lot was predestined in this match. And I'm going to tell you now.
You are talking about Scotland Island, of course, which is just only minutes before us now.
True. And I will say this: I've got a headline to beat all headlines.
Excellent. I look forward to that. As comprehensive a wrap of the second weekend of the Six Nations as we can manage over the next 25 minutes or so follows in just a few minutes. But before we get there, mate, what can people sort of expect from our new format, the Weekend Post-Mortem each week, this being our second one?
We're going to try to bring you immediacy. We're going to try to bring you insights that are non-derivative, drawn from our own brains, not just plebeian, regurgitated from all the different wires and media. We are just going to tell you how we saw it, what we saw. Sometimes as minutes post-whistle, we're not going to spend too much time fiddling with what we could do on production. What we're going to tell you is, how did Ireland overcome Scotland? How did England beat France? And then we're not going to talk about the other one that much. So you might say that we'll usually try to focus on the things that really did ring our bells, like Gerard and I did once upon a time.
and it's good at the moment because there's only a couple of games to go on. But obviously, as the season gets on, we'll be looking back over full rounds of the ERC and Super Rugby and the Premiership and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yes, but we're going to curate, so we're not going to belabor.
No, we won't go through every game.
We want to give you
We'll pick out the highlights.
Interactions with the big ones. In this match where you had the disturbing vision of Andy Farrell and Gerard Butler sometimes spliced together as if they were the same man, as if Gerard was practicing method acting for the eventual documentary or /film of Andy Farrell's life.
Yes, I did like your point on that. It was a point well made. Before we get into Six Nations round 2 in just a second, a very, very quick message. If you're listening to the 8-9 combo via Spotify or Apple Pods or any of the podcast platforms, just quickly go and hit subscribe or follow or whatever you have to do right now. And if you're watching on YouTube as well on the 8-9 channel, then just hit the red subscribe button just down there in the bottom corner. You won't miss an episode, and the numbers climbing keeps us having great rugby chats each week.
Just do it, you Scroogey bastards. We want your follows so that we can make money. Go.
Yeah, it keeps us fed. Six Nations round 2, and really, really interesting round. It has been started pretty comfortably with not that one. That's not the right score at all there. Started in Rome, Italy beating Wales pretty comfortably in the end, 22-15. England beat France 26-25 at Twickenham. And now Ireland has just beaten Scotland, as we know. What was it in the end, 32-17? I've forgotten the score all of a sudden.
32-18, 14-point margin,
Yeah. So really, really interesting games. Before we get into them, though, we have kept the 5-word headline from last year. Yes, 32-18 it was, where the winning headline becomes the pod title. What have you got?
Scotland the meek, Ireland predestined. I'm going a little bit here with some Calvinist doctrine, as you might know if you studied Scotland and David Hume and the folks. There's a great deal of chatter and doctrine for 400, 500, 600 years about, do we really have free will, or is most of it predestined? Is there written in the stars, you would say? And I felt very much like Scotland, the meek, instead of the brave or the weak or the strong, just accepted their fate and said, I'll just go for 3 here when you just keep scoring. And here's one thing we've learned about playing teams like Ireland or New Zealand in their pomp is they're going to score 28-32 anyway, no matter what. So are you going to hold up all their tries, attempted tries? No. If you can get 4 held ups And then you think, but we were right in there. Nah, that's not going to continue. So 17-11, you got to go for the jugular, especially as you're dropping backs like flies.
Yeah. My headline actually goes back to the England win, and it is simply Borthwick's full support confirmed! !
We'll see.
I mean, if he was saying he had it back in November, surely now it's definitely there. Surely
the Borthwick smile emerges.
Yeah,
was a very interesting. That was the interesting match of the round. And I do think that this is the problem of the Six Nations at current, is that you have these tiers, and Wales and Italy definitely sit in it. I saw the first Telegraph article about saying, should Wales be relegated? Oof, that's kind of mean and unkind. And I guess on the other 4 teams, we're looking at, is there a realignment? And is there a possibility by the end of this Six Nations that it's England and Ireland that end up being the top tier and the French slide? So that's interesting, because you look back at that England loss to Ireland, it was just about a 10-minute blitz, just like Scotland just suffered.
Yeah, indeed. Scotland, Ireland, then. Let's get into that. 32-18 in the end. Ireland beat Scotland it was a really, really interesting game, I've got to say. It felt like at halftime, certainly, it felt like Ireland should have been leading by much more than they were. It was a surprisingly close contest on the scoreboard, if not necessarily on the field, if that makes sense. 17-5 at halftime, Ireland led, and Scotland did fire back at them. They kicked a couple of penalties in the 10 minutes after halftime to get the gap back to 6, but then Lowe scores, Conan scores, Prendergast kicks penalty, and it's 32-11, and you feel like the game is pretty well done there before.
Yeah, let's go back into the first half, because that's where the game is really interesting.
Yep.
And here's why it is interesting, because rugby isn't that simple a game where you can just say shots on goal in anger. If I get 14 and you save them all, in the end, I'm going to win anyway, right? So we don't have an inevitability, because we can negate constant battle for possession, interesting law insanities. And so you can see a match where there is no reason why Ireland shouldn't have been up by 28-0. And the reason is, no, there is a reason, because there's barge dodge, there's nash smash, there's the fact that it attacks, if held up and snaffled and compacted and squished into the red zone, don't punch through. You're using a lot of effort to attack. You're not just a holding midfield, crossing the field, and then taking a shot at the goalkeeper. You are really having to work to get to the resource those rucks. So when Duhan goes his trademark aerials, and for the first time in a long time, may I say, he actually did need to do that, because if he'd gone classic wing sliding, he would have been out. But he did that, which he often uses unnecessarily. He scores, and the Afrikaner android makes it 17-5. And what I said at the time was, the 5 is flattering.
You did.
Okay, so now go second off and say,
was.
Now you say, who in the locker room, who in the change room, who in oranges, what would they discussed? And it's interesting, because they came out and Scotland looked like they had the bit between the teeth. They had forgotten that Finn's gone. They had put that to the side, and they said, what can we do here? And then there's just a series of incidents where I think the game could have been different. And here I would say at when it goes 8-17 and 11-17, you have this moment where there's a few calls that go kind of a weird way, Robbie Henshaw, and then at some point, Scotland just says, if we just keep ticking and take our 3s, we can get there. And I thought, Ireland's not done scoring. And the problem is your 17 is going to grow, and boom, it does. Lowe just about gets it down, and you wonder at 24-11, what could have happened. And then you really know when Jamison Gibson Park bounces that kicker for Keenan and they score, then you think the game is lost.
Yeah. On Henshaw, you comfortable with that not being a yellow card?
No, I think I would have probably carded that. Not so much I don't do in their game consistency. I like to do extra game consistency. I think that's the type of action that for several years now has been carded on the wider landscape. It just seems like when you're in that mode, deep in your red zone, defending on almost certain kind of a try, you just think you know what you're doing.
Which part of remind me which part of the ground that happened? Was it?
Let's see.
Is
That
Scotland
was
in attack in the Island 22, or was it back further upfield?
no. I think it was on deep defense, and the question was, let's see. Jamison Gibson Park had to track back on that big break by Kinghorn. So Hugh Jones makes a big break. Kinghorn keeps, probably should have given, but he keeps. Lowe's having to track back around. Jamison Gibson Park is the one that does the tackle. And then from the ensuing phases across the face of the goal line, Henshaw does one of those lazy, sort of standing up tackles with my hands really cupped.
Yeah.
Sort of a Billy LaRue move. And you know what you're doing.
It's just inside the 22, I think.
Yeah.
So
and it's one of those things where the Irish defense is fractured behind him. He knows it. It's one of the few times where the Scottish got all the way behind everyone. And I wondered about that, where the game flow could have gone. But this is not a question of on the referee, just a flow of the game itself.
It's not. Yeah.
You have a tendency at that moment. Do you just say, now we're going to ram it home and we're going to go for it? Only because the futility of the predestination comes in where you say, really, how many points do you think Ireland will notch by the end of this game? And I think any reasonable person
always going to be more than 17 at that point.
30, 32.
Yeah. I was happy enough with the call, but I agree with you. I think players are getting a lot better at that wide angle into a tackle when the ball is there.
What I would do this is not the ball down thing, but if I was actually showing vision of what Henshaw looks like in normal situations tackling, and then that, I would think it would look distinctly different. Hey, and fair play to Henshaw, because I've always thought Henshaw is one of the most clever defenders in rugby.
Yeah. There was one earlier in the game, I think, that was similarly not carded. So from an in-game consistency, which is the point you were making before, I can certainly live with it. What worked well for Ireland, their scrum platform was excellent, certainly.
Yeah, there was a moment there, again, 29-11, and Ireland went into soak mode, which is just soak pressure up, which is why all stats will end up being equal. But in the end, the fact that they had scored enough at that point, they said, we can hold on. The scrum just sealed it. It just felt like
it did.
You can go nowhere if you are not able to handle it.
3 penalties in a row, maybe?
Yeah, and they also killed mauls, which is interesting too. So they accepted the maul by Scotland. Scotland hung on too long. Unlike England, which we'll go to, where they rescued the ball just at the right time, Scotland kept letting that ball die. It flops down, and then you look at whoever, because Irish are really good at killing mauls.
Yeah,
I think one of the Ben White stays on to the very end, scores a really good try. You have
one of Scotland's best
side battles between the various matchups, because you had Porter versus Ferguson, you had Kinghorn vying with Keenan, you've got a lot of Lions and Andy Farrell looking on with his beanie, and interesting, because I just wondered, some of the players in defeat on Scotland did seem to stand out, mostly because Scotland was playing very individual rugby, and the Irish were playing beautiful, unbelievably team-orientated rugby. And so that's what won in the end. I felt like all the good things that happened for Scotland were one-offs, incredible, just specimen tries by Duhan, or wriggling tries by Ben White, superlative work at times by a Hugh Jones or whatever. And so I think those people made their claim. For the Irish, I wonder about Sam sneaking in as a bolter for the Lions, as a third choice scrum fly-off.
Yeah, it was certainly. I mean, he played very, very well. I mean, he's the length of his pass sometimes, and the time that he has on the ball sometimes. It's really, really good to watch. It was interesting telling, even, I think, that when Crowley came on, he went to fullback. They shuffled Keenan to the wing, and Prendergast played the 80.
All right, I was trying to divine inside Andy's eyes as he was looking at this thing. They kept flashing to him and Gerard, and I kept thinking, is he sort of thinking, I know who my first 2 fly-offs are, I know who my first 2 scrum-offs are, but it's all about that third one.
Yeah, really interesting. Conversely, what maybe didn't go so well for Scotland, and I mean, injuries first and foremost, was a major factor. They lost Finn Russell and Darcy Graham in the same incident, and that was
that hurt.
20 minutes in. That was
painful.
Looked really bad. And Finn Russell, initially we were hearing on the call, I was hearing on the feed I had passed an HIA, but then suddenly goes back up the tunnel, and it certainly emerges that he's not coming back on.
It's a right call for
it was
player safety, but you could tell that Finn didn't like it and would have continued in the old days, would have waved it off and run back on. I think that's all excuses. Scotland is a proper professional outfit. They've had the same coach forever, so they have to have redundancies and contingencies.
Yep. And Tom Jordan looked really good when he did fill in at fly half. Sorry, let me preface that. He looked really good for the next 20 minutes, I'll say. And then I think he actually went missing a bit at the back end when they probably needed him more.
Right. But to my point on excuses, I think, if you're going to go there, this is my headline about the meek, is you're accepting a predestined outcome. It felt very much like that. My big thing, what they didn't learn is they didn't learn that that's always going to mean you lose. So you've got to be defiant, ugly, obnoxious, a jerk, a real dickhead to beat Ireland in this game on your home patch. You have to make everything come hard. You have to be willing to, if you're going to infringe, then make it count.
Infringe properly.
Come in en masse like the Kiwis do when they say we're not going to give you a 5 or a 7 early. We're going to give you 3s, but then make someone hurt and make it rough for the ref to know who was the person. And I thought there was a lack of grim, bloody ruthlessness. That being said, there's beautiful examples of Jamie Ritchie, Johnny Gray putting shifts in, Chookman when he came on. So I'm not downing any one individual player, but as a team, I feel like Gregor, and you said this earlier, was just kind of watching his team lose and building his excuses for the press conference, which will work for some reason forever.
It felt like every time they cut to a shot of Gregor Townsend in the Scottish coach's box area, whatever it was, for the last 25 minutes, he had that same look on his face. And each time they cut to him, he seemed to be sort of more turned away from Steve Tandy. And he was sort of, by the end of it, he was just sort of sitting back going, well, this game's gone.
like an accounting seminar. He's like, the numbers just aren't adding up. I'm like, you've got to kick some chairs. Pull a Michael Checker. I don't know if they can rue one that got away, but I don't think Ireland was supposed to win that, should have won it, did win it, and it would have been
maybe
really
should have won it by more.
Scotland had done everything that they could have done. You could see a scenario where it's 32-26-ish coming down, and then you'd have more that gripping England-France ending. But instead it was, again, kind of a meek ending at home. The Piper was silenced. The crowds went away, and they didn't think again at all. They just went into excuse land.
Yeah, indeed. I think that's right. You've mentioned England France there. England 26 beating France 25, and it was all about this guy in the middle. Oh, look at that! We're still on.
Bonjour.
But that was the moment, wasn't it? Elliot Daly brushing
smell
off.
My hand.
Caught this in the face, Antoine. The fact that England were able to get themselves back into position and then work out the play that they needed, it was a fantastic line that Daly ran to score that last try. That was an England win for the ages.
Just a level of execution from bringing on your set piece guy from a wobbly line out is immediately cured by bringing on the old hand who can just hit the crossbar 75 times out of 76, Jamie George.
Yeah.
He nails Ollie Chesham. It's Jamie to Ollie to Jamie in a very quick transfer. French sack early, come early, could have been pinged, weren't. That happens. The referee's going to swallow his whistle when you're running a mole line out, so you have to accept that they're going to infringe. And then beautiful timing from Jamie to Alex Mitchell, who surely is my backup scrum off for the Lions, I would think. And then what's interesting is all the forwards are tied up. Charlie Morgan has a great analysis of this, and go read it or look at it online. He shows how all the French are tied up in the sort of aircraft carrier defense they must take. They cannot afford to let England steamroll them over either, or get into a situation where they're penalty tried, because that sometimes can happen. So they tied up. Dupont, who's now on still as a 10, 9, 15 rover back scrambler, doesn't know where he's supposed to be, is a bit wavering. That puts his guys on the outside a little bit in the quandary. And what happens is there's a perfect line between young Finn Smith with a hesitation. And like you say, Daly. And the call was beautiful. All day long. Daly.
Yeah.
Well played.
Finn Smith looked good at 10. Marcus Smith looked effective at 15, I thought.
Our friend Jeff Parks, the noted skeptic of that move, was saying, and I think he's right, it's the conditions under which the French refused to change their long kick strategy. He gave Marcus all the time in the world. He was thinking, I love this much time.
Yeah, he didn't cop a high ball till the
no contestables.
Last 10 minutes.
Yeah, no contestables. It was all long. It was all for territory. And he was thinking, you're going to give me 15 meters on a run-up every time with a channel. And he had Ben Earl on his side one time. He had Slight Home on his side. He had setups. And this was the old All Black thing where the kick return is a set piece. Where you just say, okay, I'm Israel Dag. You're going to give that much to me. I'm going to always have a wing on my side
every day. Yeah, exactly right. Conversely, I think, and this will be controversial, I think everything that France did well came off Jalabert and to an extent Ramos. I was Dupont disappointed me. In fact, there was moments during the game where he was confronted with very sevens-like pictures, I would say, and he didn't really know what to do.
Talk to me about that, because you noticed, I thought there was a good insight, and I wonder, is it because when you do so much of a shift for 6 months into sevens land and then back, do you sometimes get confused? Because you would think
maybe
on the face of it, you'd say, oh, he'd be perfect for that. Sevens guy, you know.
And you touched on it before, you know, am I playing 9 now? Am I playing 10 now? Am I covering 15? Right in this very moment, what is my role? And it didn't look like he was clear that he knew what he had to do in a few of those moments. So,
well, look, we're all in therapy right now because, I mean, especially from South African standpoint, we cannot ever wish England well. We cannot ever want them to win.
You found yourself cheering for England.
I was punching the air. I was kicking things. I was so happy. I was screaming their names. Freeman, Slightholm. I was loving them. And I thought, what is wrong with me? I feel dirty. I feel defiled. I need to go to a therapist. But there was a moment where I thought, I just want England to win, and I couldn't quite understand it. I think from the French side, I would think the Bordeaux, so they built their team a lot on the sort of spine of Toulouse, and then they have these Bordeaux backs, Louis Bielbieri and Damien Penaud, and then they have monsters from La Rochelle. Everyone comes from 3 clubs, and that's it, out of 14 clubs. And I thought in this game, well, if you want to have Jalibert on, pair him up with a different scrum off, a real classic, quick from the base, Aaron Smith type. You have Serran, you have Luku, you have Legaric even. And then bring Dupont, if you want him at the end, if that's your big thing, then bring him on at the end. And a very controversial, benched Dupont. But I think that makes more sense then. You bring him on with 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. But don't do this thing where Jalibert was the one setting Penaud and Bielbieri free. You yank him off with no fly-off cover at the very end of the match when you needed to win it. And England was rubbing their hands going, okay, so you cannot launch attacks anymore.
Yeah, and all the pressure then is on Dupont to come up with something, anything to win a game because
at his most tired.
When
people said, no, he's fully
gassed.
Fit. He's not as fit. I mean,
I agree with you.
No one at 75 minutes is really feeling great.
If you wanted to replace him, then replace him.
Yeah. Get
him off the field. Because I actually don't think leaving him on to try and play 10 or 15 or whatever is doing him any favors at the moment.
No, I thought the change of pace by Legaric was good, but then you needed someone to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you could look at that as it was the French game to lose because they mishandled so many. It was like hands like croissants, which is terrible. I don't know if they'll ever have a worse turnover, their own turnovers. It was 19 turnovers, and I think 11 of those were just dropped. Yeah,
you're not going to win a game with 19 turnovers, are you? Italy Wales wasn't much chop.
Let's talk about Gatland, because that's the only question. Italy did what they're
Yeah.
supposed to do. They kept serve at home.
Yeah.
And they handled a miserable Wales. So what do we do with this? Ben Darwin, your friend and mine, was actually at 3:00 in the morning texting me back and forth about this. And what he was saying is that he's been dealt a losing hand. There's nothing he can do about it. When you actually take the numbers and you say, how many games have these guys played together in these positions? So, Ben Thomas out of position at 10. It's scant. It's like 30% of everyone else. And my thing is, I don't know at this point if Warren has the fire to actually turn it around, and if the players are listening to him. I don't know. How do I quantify that? But
the immediate thought I had while you're asking that question is, Gatland is responsible currently for the team, for the cards that he has been dealt. He has literally picked the deck of cards. So, if he's lacking experience, it's because he hasn't picked them. And there are numerous names out there. When the squad was first named, there was numerous questions about
Max Llewellyn playing Gloucester with other Welshmen.
Where's Gareth Anscombe? It's one thing to say this is a really inexperienced Welsh team. What could Gatland expect? Well, he picked it. So, the questions stand. And whether he's got the fight to continue, that is something only he will answer.
I respect Ben Darwin. I respect, obviously, Ron Gatland's career. I wonder, though, I have a theory, and I'm trying to prove it, but I think some old hand coaches that really are good, and Warren Gatland's one of the best ever, there's a loss that they suffer it just haunts them, and they cannot find their way back. Yeah. Yes. I think Eddie got done that way in 2019 World Cup final. Yes. Yeah. And I think Warren Gatland post the Lions tour, I just have never seen him as being the same cat. I thought at the Chiefs, he just couldn't win. And ever since he's come back to Wales, he got them ready for the World Cup. And even that was against a weak pool. And now he just seems like resigned.
He's going through the motions. He's looking like Gregor Townsend for the last 25 minutes.
Gregor. I think Gregor is probably a really interesting guy, but for me right now, he just seems way too okay being the second tier in the Six Nations. Yeah. And I think you shouldn't enter.
And he's not second tier.
No, you shouldn't enter a tournament like that with the French potentially vulnerable and come that, because Scotland entering that match was the only other team capable of winning winning the Grand Slam.
So So the table now is interesting, and it's worth looking at it for a minute, because there's Ireland out in front, 4 points clear, but then France, England, Scotland, Italy have all won one.
So England has to get help from somebody. Otherwise, if Ireland holds serve, they win. If England gets help from somebody, then England's right back in the mix.
Yes. So all of a sudden, Calcutta Cup games are going to be really interesting. Even Scotland going to France is going to be interesting.
The French visit to Dublin, probably tells the tale, because if there is a team that can really stop Ireland from scoring, you would think it'd be the French.
And what, Ireland have got Wales in round 3? Yeah.
So it looms very large when we have Bernard Jackman, who's going to be our guy during the week of Bernard.
France going to Dublin.
France, Ireland.
It could be a dead rubber. It could be a dead rubber.
England has to do what they have to do. But I'm saying is, in the end, England, if they do everything right, they're still going to need the French to probably go to Dublin and deny Ireland a losing bonus point. And then suddenly it's on.
It's going to be fascinating. There's going to be plenty to talk about the Six Nations over the next month or so, certainly. On the way out, mate, there was a URC makeup game that you don't want to talk about, but I will say.
No, I can talk about it.
The Bulls beat the Stormers 33-32 in Cape Town.
It was a beautiful derby, in the sense that derbies are this, cataclysmic smashing, the North-South derby. It pits not only cultural aspects, there's a culture war underneath it. And you can imagine all the things that they call us in Cape Townian, not properly South African, not real hard, too much into lattes and floppy hair, too much of the beach, no sense of time. no sense of accountability, don't believe in sin and punishment, all that stuff. I get it.
Support the Crusaders too much.
It's what the arguments of all backwards rural folk. But let me just say, they still had to watch Clayton Blommackey's a kick at the end and for them to win. And Dobbo was so defiant. I mean, they were interviewing him, Skalkberger, Victor Matfield, were on the pitch with him, and he would not let them even formulate a question. You have to go back and watch this. Dobbo just keeps breaking in. He goes, "We fought. We never give up. We're tigers. We're lions. We never give up." And it was so obvious that the derby means so much. And the players, Ben Jason Dixon, who have redubbed Ben Jason Bluxham, would not give up. And he rams home a try, 79 minutes in. He's tackled but not held, gets up and just smashes through the Bulls like they're children and scores it, hurls the ball at the crowd and just defiantly screams. And then Clayton Blommackey misses the kick. And Clayton does this terrible thing which really annoys me. He tries to run at the clock. He goes, "Okay, so I've got 60 seconds, so I'm going to time it." And then the clock becomes his enemy because he actually gets in his own head.
I've only got 10 seconds. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. There you go.
That hurts. But anyway, the Bulls sail on. They are the better team this year so far. Yeah. And we're the goof troop. We have no plan, and we have 3 flags gone. So we have all excuses.
And the Stormers have still got a game in hand, haven't they? Yeah.
But Franz Meyer, our friend, scores a try. He takes a beautiful offload from a lock and barrels over for a try. In midair, the Buffalo doesn't know whether to go swan dive, goose dive, buffalo dive, or warthog dive, and he kind of goes a wildebeest. He's kind of wildebeest.
That's gold. That's gold. In Japan, Suntory had a win over Kobe Steelers, who were immediately above them on the table, and they needed to win that because they were in danger of sort of losing connection with that top 6 teams almost. So they're back in 6th. The really interesting thing, though, is the Wild Knights and Toshiba Brave Lupus, Panasonic Toshiba, 28-all.
What?
28-all.
That is interesting.
In the end. So 28-all.
Well, winless. Still lossless.
Panasonic missed a conversion with 5 minutes to go that would have
Wild Knights are unbeaten still.
They are unbeaten still. Toshiba, though, are only a game behind them. So, but yeah, that was again. That's a good result for Toshiba though, because if they had lost it, then Panasonic would have been like 8 points clear or something like that. So,
interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else to add?
Just raise a glass to
we've wrapped up the weekend.
Mr. 500, Gerard Butler. It was a pleasure to share some time with you. And
wasn't it only 300?
I don't know. He's up to 500 now. He has been eating a lot, I saw.
Once again, I'm left with more questions than I can ask while we're recording. That then wraps up the latest edition of the Weekend Post-Mortem. Tell us what you think right here on the 8-9 Combo YouTube channel, or you can leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify as well. You can hit us up, of course, by finding and following the 8-9 Combo on Twitter and on YouTube and on Blue Sky as well. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you can. And please do share us as far and as wide as you possibly can as well. Harry and I remain in the socials in our usual places at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. But this is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realise you needed in a rugby podcast. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we will be back in your ears midweek to gear up for another Super Rugby Pacific season with a great rugby chat with rugby columnist, author, and now novelist, Jeff Parks.
He's a novelist. Come, write books with us. Jeff writing 2 books at once.
Busy man.
That's my Twitter sound.
Do you have a blue sky sound?
Nothing but blue skies. All I see.
What sound does YouTube make?